Today, we're going to be talking about the Honda Civic, specifically the 11th generation. We'll go over its massive history, we'll talk about some specs, we'll go over the interior, the exterior, and talk about the pricing, and maybe some things to look out for when you're buying one of these guys used. But before we get into the video, this specific Civic right here is listed for sale on our website, PrivateAuto.com, the for sale by owner marketplace that gives you tools to buy or sell a car by yourself anytime, any place. Now, let's get into the video. All right, now let's talk about some history. The Civic has been around for a while, like a long while, like 52 years long while. Now today we're talking about the 11th generation, but let's talk about how we got here. Now the Civic itself had some pretty great market timing. By that I mean the Civic was rolled out in America at about 1973, which in that same year was the famous 1973 oil crisis. Low-cost, fuel-efficient cars were in demand. Everybody wanted them. I mean, everybody needed them. Now some people would say the Honda Civic was ahead of its time, mostly because A, it came at a time when oil prices skyrocketed, but it also came out around the time when the EPA also started getting really strict with its emission standards. Lots of different car manufacturers were forced to put catalytic converters to adhere to the stricter emission standards. However, because the Civic ran so efficiently, it actually didn't need to change anything to meet those standards. Now that's pretty dang awesome. An engine was able to adhere to emission standards 10 years in the future. Honda calls that a flex. Now let's get into the models themselves. So today the Civic comes in either a hatchback or a sedan model, and that remains largely true throughout the history. But throughout the years, it is worth mentioning that there, for example, the first few generations had a station wagon model, and then later down the road, they transitioned that car to an entirely different model specifically. Starting in 1973, the first generation Civic was pretty dang bare bones. It was pretty stock, it was designed to be reliable and affordable to meet the demand of the American public. It had a sedan, a hatchback, and a station wagon model. In 1980, the second generation Honda Civic built off the success of the first generation. The interior was a little bit bigger, roomier, and a little bit more luxurious, while you also got a little bit more power and better steering and handling. Generation 3, Honda introduced the SI version of the Civic. Pretty much this is where Civics started to get fun. 1988, Generation 4 Civics were the first Civics to get VTEC, which is a pretty iconic engine cam technology that Civics are pretty known for. In 1992, commonly known as the EG, the 5th generation Civics were wildly popular. They were easy to engine swap and just easy to modify in general. This is the first generation that the Civic sold over 1 million units. And this generation was largely the genesis of Honda Civic fan culture. And others could even argue that this is the genesis of tuning culture itself. Following the massive success of the Generation 5, in 1996, the 6th generation Civic became the dominant car in the market. This Civic was the car. It was the Civic. This was also the first generation to introduce the Civic Type R, the sporty, more track-focused version of the Civic. In 2001, the 7th generation was actually really similar to the 6th generation. However, this was the first generation that Honda added a hybrid Civic. In 2006, with the 8th generation Civic, Honda decided to split the Civic into two distinct platforms, one for the sedan and coupe models, and another for the hatchback model. This is also the generation where VTEC got an upgrade. It went from VTEC to iVTEC. Without explaining VTEC too much, this basically just means the engines were more efficient without having to sacrifice a lot of power. Moving to 2012, Generation 9 actually looked super similar to Generation 8. You'll be hard pressed to actually tell the difference between the two. Let's be real. Basically, the difference was it just had an upgraded motor and a more modern interior. In 2016, Honda heard a lot of complaints about the looks of the previous two generations, so they took that to heart and gave us the 10th generation Civic. This is probably the most radical design change out of any other Civic generation. Look at this thing, doesn't he look angry? He looks way angrier than the other Civics. And now finally, we're caught up. 2022, the 11th generation Civic. This generation kind of walked a couple steps back from the aggressive line and more towards the sleek, simple, sharp, and more sophisticated look. Personally, I think this is one of the best looking Civics out there. Honestly, if I had to pick a favorite, it would probably be either the 11th generation, the 2nd, or the 3rd generation. What do you guys think? Which one is your favorite? That is it. That is 52 years of Honda Civic, 11 generations. That is an insane family tree. Alright, now that we're all caught up on the lore of the Civic, let's get into a tour of the interior and the exterior of the car. Starting off with a walk around of the exterior. Now this generation looks clean and sharp compared to the other generation. I personally love it a lot. This is the most Civic looking Civic that we've had in a while. It shies away from the more aggressive look of the previous generation and walks it into a more simple yet sharp design. Starting with the front bumper, the only chrome that you're going to see here is going to be on the Honda badge, and it actually keeps that theme throughout the rest of the body. Now I'm a big fan of all the modern cars kind of shying shying away from chrome. I think chrome deletes look really, really good, and I hope that trend continues. And luckily it does throughout most of the body of the Civic. You won't see very much chrome on this car. And remember, today we are going to be specifically focusing on the Civic Sedan Sport. You'll get these really nice LED projector headlights paired with daytime running LEDs on the top, with the turn signal being immediately underneath the DRLs, but just orange. I think it looks really clean. As far as the exterior, that's really about it. There isn't too much to say. It is a Civic. It's not gonna be particularly striking in any way, but hey, he's a pretty dang good looking fella, all right? Now, moving on to the interior, there is a little bit more to talk about. Right off the bat, you'll notice this hexagon mesh type grate kind of running across the middle there. That isn't just a design choice, that's actually where your air vents are hidden. Now, this is kind of nice. They're all kind of in one spot, and you adjust them with those little knobs there as opposed to little rollers that you see on other cars. I'm actually a big fan of this. I think it looks really nice. Above that, you'll get a floating display here with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay capabilities. Below that, you'll have your climate controls. What's cool about those little dials there is they have a digital screen, so when the car's off, it's just a blank space, but when it's on, you'll see the temperature. Now, something worth mentioning, most cars' ACs stop at around like 62, 64, and then below that is just low, right? Not this car. The Civic goes all the way down to 58 degrees. I'm not sure what kind of psychopath needs to have their car at 58 degrees Fahrenheit, but it is an option. The display is going to have a mix of digital gauges with physical gauges. You're going to get like a physical needle, but everything else is going to be digital. Where the RPMs display is, you'll have a tachometer, but you can switch that up on the settings and the menus and whatnot. Moving on, each of the seats are going to be cloth material. If you want leather, you're going to have to go for a more expensive trim, or even the nicer version of the Civic, like the Civic SI or the Civic Type R, stuff like that. But hey, let's be real, a Civic's not meant to be luxury, it's meant to be practical. And speaking of seats, moving on to the back, the Civic is a compact sedan. However, the back seats are surprisingly roomy. And I didn't know this, but apparently this is what Civics are known for, as being a little bit roomier than your typical compact car. I'm 6'1", and I've been in the back of one of these, and my knees, like, they do touch the back, but it is not annoying. I'm not like, you know, scooping on for dear life back there. I'm actually comfortable, and I've got room to breathe and move around a little bit. And if you take a look back in the trunk, again, compact sedan, nothing too impressive, but something worth mentioning is you can fold down the back seats, and when you do that, you actually extend the length of the trunk. So you can put like long boards through the trunk, and it goes into the back seat. Pretty nice, pretty handy. Now that we've seen stuff on the surface, let's go ahead and see what's on the inside of this car. So getting into the specs, you have an inline 4-cylinder making about 150 horsepower. You'll get about 133 pound-feet of torque, and the red line sits at about 6,700 RPM. Now this part is actually really worth mentioning. This car is a CVT transmission, not your standard automatic transmission. It's not going to be like an 8-speed or a 6-speed transmission you'd find in like a Camry, for example. Some people really don't like the feel of CVT transmissions. They feel wildly different. Personally, I hate them, but that's just my opinion. It is absolutely worth test driving to see if it's going to be a problem for you or if it isn't. CVT transmissions are good at fuel economy, but they're not so great at performance. It's definitely going to be slower off the line, not going to be super zippy, but I mean, hey, this car isn't meant to be a race car, it's meant to be a reliable daily driver. As far as fuel economy goes, you can expect to get 31 miles per gallon in the city and 39 highway with a combined of 34. You got a 12.4 gallon tank, and you can expect to get about 400 miles of range if you drive reasonably, you know. And again, that's pretty consistent with the whole theme of the car. Super reliable, super practical. It's going to be good for the money. That fuel economy is crazy for a car that isn't a hybrid. Oh, I guess it is worth mentioning there are hybrid options, so that number only gets better from here. All right, let's go ahead and get some tips for those of you looking to buy one of these used, or just looking to see what maybe the price would look like. So the 11th generation Civic is pretty dang new. We're talking like 2022 new, which means the first wave of used vehicles are actually starting to come out. So typically when you're looking for a used one, you're going to see anywhere from like, you know, 0 miles all the way up to about 50, maybe 75,000 miles if it's a little bit outrageous, if someone's just using it like on the highway constantly. But mainly right now, the used cars are sitting around 20 to 50,000 miles. And when it comes to the price, so MSRP on the Sport trim starts at about $26,000, and that is brand new. We are kind of at a weird point in time right now where new cars are pretty dang close to the price of the used cars. The average price right now for a Honda Civic Sedan Sport, something around 25 to 50,000 miles, is going to be about $22,000 to $24,000. That's as of making this video right now. Just remember to always keep up with the current pricing around your area. Don't ever shop for a car in one place. Always shop for cars in multiple different places. Thinking of buying a car on Craigslist, be sure to check other marketplace options like, for example, Facebook or KSL or even eBay Motors, or shameless self-plug us, PrivateAuto.com, but always stay up to date on the price. Now, here are a couple other things to look out for when buying this thing used. It is worth mentioning that there was a pretty significant recall when it comes to the power steering. There was a part in it where it kind of caused the power steering to disable. I think a lot of them have been fixed. It is worth running a VIN that you might be potentially buying through the manufacturer's website to see if that recall's been fixed. If it hasn't, you can maybe use that as a bargaining chip, and if it has, good for you. It's also worth looking for other YouTube videos that can go more in depth to mechanical problems. I've seen a couple other YouTube videos explaining how certain seals may be not super tight, but a lot of them seem to be pretty anecdotal for now. I mean, this is a Civic. This thing is super reliable. They're built to last, and you won't see too many people complaining about these. Now, moving on to some final thoughts here, this car is a fantastic daily driver option. If you're looking for a solid, reliable vehicle that's going to get you from point A to point B, and you have a little bit more money to spend, like in the $20,000 to $30,000 range, this car is absolutely solid. If you want something that will run and just keep running, look no further. The car's got a massive legacy of success. I mean, we went through all of it earlier in the video, and these things are pretty dang nice. Usually when people compromise for a reliable car, you tend to compromise a little bit on looks and whatnot. I think this car looks stellar for the price. I think this car looks amazing. Also functions amazing too. Anyways, guys, that's about it for me. Thank you for watching the video. If you want to see more of these reviews, stay tuned. We do release one of these about every week. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.